So have you ever wondered if our modern epidemic of chronic illness, relentless stress, and poor sleep is actually linked to something as simple as our physical disconnection from the planet? The biological stakes of our modern lifestyle are incredibly high. Today, we're exploring a deeply controversial yet absolutely fascinating trend known as grounding or earthing. The radical biophysical claim here is that reconnecting the human body to the Earth's surface can literally cure diseases through a direct transfer of electrons. But is this groundbreaking biology, or is it just a $5 billion placebo effect?
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to completely strip away the wellness hype and reason strictly from the first principles of human physiology. We're going to weave through cellular electrodynamics, systemic inflammation, glymphatic clearance, and metabolic health to understand exactly what happens to our internal biological framework when we make physical contact with the Earth.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. We'll start with the grounding hypothesis, then move through cortisol and circadian biology, autonomic nervous system regulation, the zeta potential phenomenon, evaluate the scientific evidence, and finally, look at the healing power of nature.
Let's dive right into Section 1, the grounding hypothesis, looking at the biophysics of the Earth and the body.
Proponents of this theory start with a really fundamental thesis. They argue that the surface of the Earth possesses a limitless, continuously renewed supply of free, mobile electrons. And because our human bodies are electrically conductive, the hypothesis posits that direct contact allows these negatively charged electrons to transfer straight into us. By definition, earthing or grounding is this conductive contact, allowing the body to essentially equilibrate with the Earth's electrical potential. Biologically speaking, proponents hypothesize that these mobile electrons travel through our connective tissue matrix to quench inflammation right at the cellular level. They're suggesting these electrons act as natural antioxidants, neutralizing positively charged reactive oxygen species to protect our mitochondrial energetics from collateral oxidative damage.
Now, think about this from an evolutionary perspective. Historically, humans were in constant physical contact with the ground. We walked in bare feet, wore conductive leather footwear, and slept on animal skins. But compare that to our modern state. Today, we wear insulated rubber and plastic soles, we live in high-rises, and we sleep on elevated beds. Grounding advocates argue that we have completely severed our primordial electrical link to the planet, and that this disconnect is potentially throwing our immune and nervous systems profoundly out of balance.
Moving on to Section 2, cortisol and circadian biology, specifically how grounding might normalize the day-night rhythm.
If this electrical connection really does exist, how does it interact with our internal biological clocks? To understand this, we have to look at the first principles of our biology. A healthy 24-hour cortisol rhythm should peak in the morning to wake you up, gradually decline throughout the day, and hit its absolute lowest point at night to allow for sleep initiation and that all-important deep glymphatic clearance in the brain. But the chronic disruption of the modern world throws this entirely off. Interestingly, though, a pilot study on grounding showed that subjects sleeping on grounded mats actually restored this normal day-night cortisol profile, bringing their out-of-range nighttime secretions back to healthy baselines.
Clinical pilot studies like the Gailey and Teplitz trial reveal some really fascinating data points. 11 of about 12 participants fell asleep faster, and all 12 woke up fewer times at night, experiencing significantly reduced nighttime pain. But even more mind-blowing is the historical so-called bunker experiment. Test subjects literally lived in an underground bunker, completely isolated from natural daylight. Yet, the subjects who remained electrically grounded to the Earth maintained their normal circadian rhythms, despite a total absence of sunlight. This suggests something pretty wild, that oscillations in the Earth's electrical potential might actually act as a secondary biological clock for us.
Let's look at Section 3, autonomic nervous system regulation and the shift to parasympathetic tone.
Beyond just sleep, researchers in this space claim this electrical contact acts as a profound reset button for our autonomic nervous system. This brilliantly illustrates the contrast within our bodies. On one side, you have the sympathetic state. That's our fight or flight mode, driven by stress, marked by high skin conductance, and an elevated blood volume pulse. On the flip side, we have the parasympathetic state, our rest and digest mode. This is characterized by high vagal tone, high heart rate variability, and deep cellular recovery. Grounding research claims that connecting to the Earth triggers an almost instantaneous shift away from that sympathetic stress straight into that parasympathetic recovery state.
The magnitude of this shift is best represented by a single striking number, 67%. In a study involving highly vulnerable preterm infants in incubators, researchers found that electrically grounding the infants resulted in a 67% increase in vagal tone.
That is a massive indicator of improved homeostatic resilience and parasympathetic activation. It suggests the nervous system is calming down at a profound, highly measurable level.
These biofeedback studies document incredibly rapid physiological shifts. We're talking within seconds of grounding. Researchers noted an immediate decrease in skin conductance, a significant increase in heart rate variability, and abruptly altered left hemisphere EEG readings right alongside a decreased blood volume pulse. Taken together, these metrics point to a nervous system that is rapidly downregulating stress, breaking that chronic fight-or-flight feedback loop, and building systemic resilience.
Section 4. The zeta potential phenomenon, where we look at altering blood electrodynamics. To really understand this parasympathetic shift, we have to look beneath the nervous system all the way down to the molecular level. We need to examine how the Earth's electrical potential might literally change the physical electrodynamics of our blood. Focus on this number for a second, 2.70. This represents the mean increase in the zeta potential of red blood cells observed in subjects after just 2 hours of conductive contact with the Earth. Zeta potential is essentially the surface charge of a cell, and this subtle physical shift opens up a really fascinating scientific intrigue.
Because like charges repel, an increased negative surface charge forces these red blood cells to repel each other more strongly. The crucial point here is that this physical change prevents cellular clumping, essentially decreasing blood viscosity naturally. This means you get smoother blood flow, better oxygen delivery to tissues, and improved mitochondrial energetics, all without removing a single cell from the bloodstream.
Which brings us to Section 5, evaluating the scientific evidence and the rigorous skepticism surrounding this topic.
Now, I know these biological mechanisms sound revolutionary, but it's absolutely crucial that we apply rigorous scientific skepticism and impartially evaluate the intense pushback coming from the broader scientific community. Let's look at the physics. Theoretical physicist Dr. Karen Livesey points out that these tiny currents are almost undetectable, noting there's no causal link in the literature explaining why a buildup of charge would adversely affect our health. Physicists note that the human body already contains roughly 10 octillion electrons. The current actually measured from these grounding beds is around 10 nanoamps. To put that into perspective, that is 1 billion times smaller than the current drawn by a standard household appliance. To a physicist, the math on this massive biological impact simply does not add up.
Furthermore, the methodological critiques from major scientific institutions are heavy. Many of these pilot studies feature tiny sample sizes, often looking at just 10 or 12 people. There's also a severe lack of double blinding, which makes the results highly susceptible to the placebo effect. Then there's the issue of circular citations. The foundational studies all seem to cite a very small overlapping group of researchers. And biologically speaking, critics argue the entire concept of electrons neutralizing non-charged free radicals is scientifically vague and entirely unproven.
We also have to contextualize the massive financial incentives at play here. The global earthing equipment market was valued at an astounding $5.5 billion in 2023. This is a massive industry, driven by the sale of grounding mats, copper-threaded bed sheets, and even specialized copper-threaded socks. Skeptics rightly point out that this looks a lot less like revolutionary biophysics and a lot more like turning a highly profitable buck on a modern wellness trend.
And finally, Section 6, the healing power of nature, what might just be the ultimate confounding variable. When we weigh this massive financial incentive against the physiological data, we really have to account for this ultimate confounding variable, the healing power of nature. Are the physiological benefits observed in these studies actually due to a complex transfer of electrons, or is it a universally established scientific mechanism? Just look at the robust epidemiological evidence regarding basic nature contact. Studies show that living in areas with just a 30% parkland canopy significantly lowers the risk of heart disease, diabetes, and high blood pressure. Nature independently regulates the HPA axis and vagal tone without any need for an electrical current. Merely being in green spaces reduces psychological distress, lowers cortisol, and drastically improves sleep sufficiency.
Think about it. When you go outside to walk barefoot in the grass, you aren't just touching the earth. You're naturally exposing your retinas to sunlight, which anchors your circadian rhythm. You're breathing fresh air, you're moving your body, and you're engaging in mindfulness away from your screens. These behavioral and environmental shifts may very well be the true active ingredients normalizing your nervous system rather than some imperceptible flow of electrons.
So I leave you with this final thought to take away. Does the magic of human recovery truly lie in the invisible biophysics of the Earth's electrons? Or do we simply not need complex, multi-billion-dollar wellness theories to validate the restorative, deeply necessary power of just stepping outside, breathing deeply, and reconnecting with the natural world? It is a fascinating question,
and definitely one worth pondering the next time you decide to take off your shoes.